Good morning. My name is Bob Pace, and I am here to host a show called the How to Fight CPS and Win. And I will relate some stories that I may have to say. Also, we usually like to have people call in. I'm a little bit of a cold fighting it, so my voice sounds a little scratchy. It's all because I'm fighting a bad cold. Anyway, I want to welcome all of you to the show provided by Vincent W. Davis. He's an attorney at law. He's a trial attorney. Um, he's a family law attorney, and he knows his business quite well. And he's behind us on how to fight CPS and win. We can be reached at 888-888-6582. That's the number to call in, and you can schedule a appointment to talk to him, and he help you strategy. He give you a 30-minute time to strategize um, what the game plan is, how to fight CPS and win. He's very thorough. He knows what he's doing. And so please call in that number and schedule a time to do for the appointment. Um, anyway, my experience is related to what I went through in social social services, and the part is the child protection services. Social services is an agency that helps people with all kinds of things. It helps them with, food and medical. It also has a branch called the Child Protection Services that protect our children. It's very important that we know and realize that our children are protected. And if somebody alleges something is harmful to your child, they can call in anonymous and report the allegations. Now, a lot of times the allegations are not true. Sometimes they are true, and it's sad that some children are abused, both physically and sexually. They're abused or neglect, and so my experience with the Child Protection Service was a very terrible experience. My family at that time was a family of four. We had a mother, a dad, and family of five. I keep saying family of four. A family of five, and we had one daughter and two boys. There's the sibling and so forth, and we were experiencing a heartache at the time. I had lost a job, and I had worked all my life, and I was 60 at the time. And in 2015, there was allegations made, and we didn't know at this time who made the allegations. Later, find out that it was family members of my wife's side, and the allegations weren't true, but we had to go through hell to keep our family. I was really saddened by the fact is that the I thought that Child Protection Service was the agency to help get our family back together again. I believed in the system. I had no idea that they were out to break our family apart and to keep our children in custody as long as they could so they can get financial gain from it. The courts that I was involved in are really disappointing because you're guilty until you're proven innocent. Most criminal matters, you're innocent till you're proven guilty. But in child protection, they can make allegations, and they have to take it's true. And that's the hard thing because you can sit there and say, um, they're not true and so forth. But the mechanism to help you out in this matter is having an attorney. And that was the mistake that I made because I didn't have an attorney present in the beginning. And excuse me a second. Um, Not having an attorney is like not having a doctor perform surgery or a cure or anything else. We all need a professional. It's like a mechanic to work on your car. Some of us are do yourself mechanics, and I thought I could do myself. in the legal system, and also I was blindsided, thinking that the system would be fair, but you don't know all the loopholes, you don't know all the things that they're going to put you through, and they're not there to help you. That's the disappointing part. I thought for sure that if you told the truth and you asked for assistance, they would help you, but instead they distorted the truth and made your life like a living hell. Um, and I mean that. Our family now is four. Our daughter was coerced and convinced to divorce her mom and dad, and she left. And I still have our sons in touch with our daughter, so they're still trying to be somewhat a family unit. But she divorced her parents, and when she divorced it, she divorced the family, changed her name, she unsealed her birth certificate, and so she's trying to erase the existence. And this was all at the age of 12. She's 21 now, but at age 12, that's what she was convinced at that time. And children are very misled and so forth. Um, it happened really kind of strange at first. We were struggling without a lack of jobs, so uh, the expenses I had, a gardener to take care of my yard. I couldn't take care of my yard as great as I wanted to, and so that was really a burden. And it was a big house. It was a big house. It was a 4 bedroom house, 2 stories. It had a big swimming pool, a yard with an English garden and a tropical garden, and it was a really lovely home. And neighbors not too close, so they're not on top of you. And it's a well-to-do neighborhood. It was a private neighborhood, and so you're pretty much to your own there. But what had happened is that I got a phone call, and they wanted to talk to you about that. I said, I don't know what you're talking about. Some of the things they're coming up with is, we understand you don't have electricity or gas, and your children be neglected and don't have baths, don't go to school, which is far from the truth. Because I took out all the utility bills, showed that we are paying for it and everything. And the children did go to school. Since I was out of work at the time, I ended up sheltering the kids. My wife was staying home. She was having a lot of disabilities with medical issues. And so at no time did we not we exhibit any proper or improper behavior among our children. What had happened is that my wife's parents made allegations along with their daughter of stuff that really wasn't true, and they were interested in taking away. Um, we have an older daughter that I've known since she's 5. She's now 36, but at the time when this was going on, she was about 25, and of course she was living out on her own then. And when she was growing up, her family would a lot of times fly her back, and I encouraged her to see her grandmother, grandfather. Little did I know that they were trying to see what's going on in our household, and instead of trying to help us, um, pull us apart and so forth. It's really uh, kind of hard when you have people that work against you and you think they're family members that love you, and that wasn't the case at all. Um, Something that we should try to understand about CPS or Child Protection Services is that uh, they have supposed to have a goal of uniting the family. It's only supposed to take a year. Ours was 3 years long, and it was never at any time exhibit a chance to come back. I thought we would meet once a week with the family and discuss the issues that are brought up and see what it could do to be better with them. And in our case, the only thing they can come up with is, unfortunate, when my parents were in their last years of their life, not doing well, they wanted to get rid of their home, and so we took all their belongings, which was a lot of belongings. You can imagine their home combined with our home. We suddenly had boxes, and because we had the boxes, they felt that that was neglect, And at the time, I had the stuff outside underneath tarps, but the CCRs didn't um, allow you to have that. So I had to move the stuff in the house, or I had to um, uh, put it in the garage. And so I did my best, but a lot of stuff had to be put in the house, and what wasn't put in the house, I had in the yard. And so it looked like a clutter effect and so forth. But in no time were our kids in danger or risk as anything. Um, CPS process in California is composed of the following stages. The first is the reporting phase, and this is where they hear the allegations, they try to contact the parents, and they try to find out. They could also go to school to find out. There's a lot of power the Child Protection Services has. And then after the reporting phase, there's the initial probing. That's where they come up with the allegations. Now, the allegations uh, have to be something like willful neglect. Is there physical or sexual harm to the children? Um, the thing is supposed to be settled in 30 days. They have 30 days to file a case against you. So, um, when a child abuse report is made, and that's what it is, it can be from a lot of reasons. It can be from someone that did excessive punishment. Domestic violence does not have to be hitting. It can be yelling in front of your kids. That's the grounds for them to, if you argue a lot or yell with your other half, which me and my wife did do so, we have to learn our social skills and how to talk to each other. But it was all related to money, and that was the hard problem. But um, when this report is made, there is an investigation, and there's usually suspected abuse and neglect. Now, they're required by law to investigate situations that may be harmful to children. Most of the time, uh, when people call in, um, the reports are made and they do investigation. And it's really related to what neglect has happened to the child. Um, some of the things, besides corporal punishment, can be physical, could be demeaning or putting a child down or not showing love, or abandonment. Maybe the parent leaves the child for days on end or locks them up and so forth. And one thing, a visit from CPS can be very upsetting and confusing for families. Now, the report is uh, made uh, by the um, CPS, and it doesn't mean necessarily that you're a bad parent. It could mean that you need more parenting skills, more classes. Um, there's things called anger management, parent skills, how to take care of your child, how to feed, and so forth. And so I thought when they met with me, and I did not have them meet in my home, and I wish I'd known that you do not have to answer the letters, you don't have to answer calls, you don't have to let them in your home. What you do need to know is that when you start to get suspected, that's the time you need to get a hold of an attorney, and he can develop the strategies for you to fight this and keep your family together. Um, now, A lot of times, the social worker may make unannounced visits to your home. Again, you don't have to answer the home or so forth. And they're going to do what's called a home assessment. They want to come in and look at your home, see if you have a bed, see if you have a cupboard full of food and and your refrigerator is full of food and so forth. And then after they look at that and they see the rest of your home, they look for things that endanger a child. And in our case, they did not like the idea of boxes, even though the boxes weren't as high as our children. Our children were quite older at the time, not necessarily they're preteens, but um, our boy was 15, girl was 12, and another boy was 9. And so it's very traumatic for them as children to go through what they did there. We had them in AYSO soccer, we had them in Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, and we had really involved in their way. We also involved with their school. We go to their parent back to school night, and we would help them with their homework and so forth. So the social worker to determine whether the abuse or the neglect was substantiated, inclusive, or unfounded. So if it's unfounded, that means the report is determined to do not be true. Inconclusive means that there isn't enough information to know either way. Substantiate means you have credible information to believe that child abuse or neglect. Ours was inclusive. They weren't sure. And so the social worker does talk to you, but they're really tricky when they talk to you. They're not your friend, which I was really mistaken. I thought for sure they could help you. In our case, the child protection services, uh, they they don't really help somebody that has a career job or have a hiccup or so forth. Because I'd worked all my life. I'd worked over 40 years, and so I'm 74 now, and I'm looking for another job. I did get a job for a year and a half, but they ran out of work for me, so I'm out there looking again. But during that time, it it's really, really, really hard because when you lose your career job, you lose the ability to pay your mortgage. You eventually have to sell our home, which we did. We lasted about 5 years in our home, and then we had to sell it. We had a very high end mortgage. I had a predatory loan, and the predatory loan is where they change the facts about you and qualifies you for something you cannot afford to pay. And in my case, they gave me a credit line, and you start using a credit line, and it's very falsified because you have to pay back the credit line, and then you got your uh, first mortgage, your credit line will be your second mortgage, and so forth. Um, so they're going to try to look at all the documents and so forth. Um, CPS cannot be viewed without a court order. That's something I did not know. And there are rights that you have as a parent. You have the right to be treated in a professional manner. I was not treated very professionally. I was not shown dignity or respect and free from discrimination. I don't think I was discriminating, but maybe because I represented an upper class parent, maybe they're trying to discriminate me there. I don't know. You have the right to have your language, culture, other special needs accommodated. You have the right to speak to the supervisor or program manager, which I did. In fact, I talked to the top dog who lives in what I call the Taj Mahal of child protection services. I mean, it is the most fantastic looking building I've ever seen. It's a lot better building than social services has, and they have quite a lot of money that they get for having children um, in custody, uh, which is uh, when they're in custody, they try to put your kids into uh, foster care. But before they did that, how they finally got to me, and again, I did not talk to an attorney, which I wish I should have, because I thought I was innocent. I thought by telling them that there's no comprehension of what you're saying, that everything would be fine, and that really wasn't the case because the they kept trying to use. I hate to say the word trickery, but they keep trying to use um, uh, deception. Maybe that's a better word to do it there. And so eventually, one time, since I was not seeing what cooperative with them, they followed me when I picked up my children from school. Now, my one was still in elementary school. He's in the fifth grade, and I think he was going into the uh, sixth grade, and so they followed me to school. Now, how they followed me is they went ahead and got a hold of the police department. They can get the police department to help them break in to your home and so forth. I didn't know about this. Really, you don't need to allow the police department unless they have a court order. And you know, they wanted to take our children away from the home. Um, um, so, in that being the case, um, they had this policeman in Denmark, detective, and he followed me down. He followed me for about 5 miles. It was really strange because I was heading to pick up my wife, who was at her hair appointment, and she was waiting for me. I had my son with him, and we were talking and so forth. All of a sudden, I saw black and white from another direction, so they make a U-turn, put his lights on, and pull me over. What the detective did, he used the black and white to pull me over. And you're required by law when a policeman summons you to stop. So I stopped. I talked to the policeman. He said that, um, you know that you ran a stop sign. I said, no. And where did that happen? He said, well, the officer behind me was unmarked detective, and he wants to talk to you. So he talked to me, and I said, how can I help you? He said, well, I want you to follow me back to your house. I said, my wife needs to be picked up. She's left stranded. Can I call her? I said, no. He insisted. And you don't argue with police because you think they're no, like, you trust them. I trusted the police. I trusted child protection services. I trusted social services. I uh, I trusted them all on that. So um, it was really, really, it's really, really, really hard on you as a um, parent because you don't know. Again, it's like a doctor. You don't know uh, what they can do and what they can't do, and so that being said, it's really, really hard. There. Excuse me, my cold there. So I followed them back to my home, and out front of my home was the fire department, which I don't know why they were there. Agency called Code Enforcement. So there's 5 people from the fire department, 3 people from code enforcement, a detective, and then 3 social workers. All were waiting to talk to me, and I said, how can I help you and so forth. Explained to you about why I need to get my wife and stuff and so forth. And unbeknownst to me, um, unbeknownst to me, um, I had no idea what they were planning, but they were trying to use trickery to take a hold of our children. They went and picked up your children, even though they did not have a right to do so. Um, they they um, uh, were making it sound like we did something awful. And I guess what happened is that my wife's parents and her siblings had made up such a wild goose story that they believed what they were saying. Um, my wife's sister is a social worker. I don't know if she works in child protection services, but they were determined to get her children. Why? They loved our children. Our children were beautiful, well-respected children, and so um, the game plan was to adopt one of our child. They tried to adopt our older daughter, who at that time was 25 at the time, and she was pretty much on her own. She moved out when she was 25. But when she was real young, they used to fly her trips back there. And of course, stories that she may or may not said, they kind of exaggerate. It's like, have you ever done a thing where in a circle of people, and these people will sit there and tell you a story. By the time it gets around to the fourth and fifth person, the story is um, is to distort it so bad that it doesn't represent actually what really has happened. Now, CPS, the reason they can take your children, they have to be physically injured other than means of accidental means. A child is subject to willful cruelty or justified punishment. Now, willful cruelty could be very demeaning or domestic violence with yelling at your child. You cannot yell at one another. That is domestic violence. That's one thing I learned. Yelling is not allowed. And so that is domestic. A child abuse uh, or, you know, uh, can also relate to the unjustified punishment. And some parents are bad. They'll take cigarettes or burn their child or run scalding hot water. In fact, my wife, when she was a young child, her mom tried to put hot coffee on her. There's things that she should be reported there. And so I think the cycle repeats itself. And also, there's the thing called exploited sexuality. Now, the sexual thing, they always try to think something sexual, but in my case, they didn't come up with anything sexual at all, except when they decided to do a civil case on top of child protection services, citing neglect. The detective reported to the city attorney, who filed uh, three counts because we have three children to me and my wife, and they're unfounded. And that's a trial that we get trial by jury, and that's where you are supposedly innocent to proven guilty. And that went on. That case was another nightmare because that went on for a year, year and a half, and they finally made a proposition. They said if we erase the sexual charges and drop all the charges against my wife, you wouldn't have to appear. You just have to admit that you did a misdemeanor and that you did neglect. You had too many belongings too high. It wasn't safe for your children. And I listened to what they said. I also had a financial burden where I couldn't afford an attorney. The attorney I had was really nice enough for a low fee to help me go through this, but he couldn't afford it fighting. Now that I know what I know now, I should have held my guns and fought, because in the end they would have dropped the case. Because they really did not have evidence on any of the things that they were doing. It just, I didn't want to drag my family or my wife's family or anybody else, brothers and sisters, who a very horrible thing. It's like they're on a witch hunt. They said, "Look at us. We got a very well-to-do parents, highly educated." they they thought for sure we had done something horrible. Um, they did try to say we didn't provide adequate care for food, clothing, shelter, medical care, or supervision. We would take them to doctors when they're sick. They had medical care. The school, they're doing quite well in school. All were maintaining high level classes. And our oldest son uh, was finishing his way through middle school on his way to high school. And he was in a STEM program. Now, STEM is where they take classes in engineering, mathematics, science, and technology. And that's if they want to be a scientist, an engineer, and so forth. My oldest son wanted to be a robotic engineer, and so he's going to a special private school at the time. They're not cheap, and I was able to acquire funds to make sure he'd go through there. Our daughter uh, was in middle school and having traumatic effects with her classmates. She got herself, it's really hard when a man loses a job and can no longer provide for his family. He goes through a really traumatic experience. He starts questioning himself why I cannot get a job, why can I provide? Because I took pride in myself. I started working when I was 15 years old. I've had a job every year since age 15. And, I'm 74 now, so 59 years I've had some type of a job. And I always wanted to provide and take care of my family. And when you can't work or you're laid off because they don't want to tell you you're too old and they want some other excuse, because we have people that want to be presidents or our presidents of our country that are older than me, and they have a high level job. So this thing about age, there is still age discrimination. They find out because you give them your birth date, or you tell them how old. They're not supposed to ask those kinds of questions. And I'm one of those people that I speak from my heart. I tell the truth. I believe in our country. I believe in our government, and I trust everything. And I guess it is sometimes there are bad apples, and like anything else, it affects all kinds of people from all walks of life. And we've all seen in the news media. And I'm thankful I'm in the United States, but at times I wonder why I was like Alice in Wonderland, who had fallen down a rabbit hole, and I don't know where I was going, what I was going to do. And one of the things when you're going through all this, there's no support groups. In fact, I joined a one support group, and it was just for them to make money off you. It's sad to say there are people out there that do those kinds of things, and they want to make money off you, and I think that's really wrong, um, because they should not be taking that money from you. So anyway, the Child Protection Agency felt there was enough evidence with the belongings of my parents and the clutter that the children were in danger, and being so, they immediately wanted the children taken from the school, taken from the family unit. Usually, they try to keep the family unit together. In this case, they weren't. So they took my two kids in middle school, or actually high school, one in middle school, one in elementary. And the one in elementary was beside me, and he was so devastated. He's a precocious boy. He's a senior there this year in high school. And his varsity football team just won the national championships. They won so many accolades. In 4 years he played there, and I'm proud of him. But, people say, well, was your case solved? Yeah. In 2017, our children were returned 2 out of the 3. And I guess there was not enough funds to continue the fight for the third one. And the third one was already convinced. And she went ahead and she divorced not only the parents, she divorced her brothers. And that was something I could not believe that the courts allow that. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the judges in these courts. It's very important you, as a voter, uh, vote for the judges because the judges are voted in, and a lot of them are bad judges. And a way to replace them is that you have to vote the right judge to be in there. The judge we had as a horrible judge uh, had a background in collision damage to cars. He knew a lot about court cases related to collision in cars, but he had no experience in family law, no experience working with families or children and stuff like that. So, in the courtroom, it is a very horrible experience. It's like a cattle place. The cattle go to auction to be sold. The uh, uh, the CPS workers, the attorney for the CPS workers, the attorneys for each of our kids, and for me and my wife. You see, one thing when you get involved, you think they would have an attorney represent the family, but instead, I had an attorney, my wife had an attorney. We both started with public defenders, which is a mistake. And then our three children had attorneys. They also had therapists. Each child had a therapist. And the sad part was, is they never had any group meetings with family members to discuss things or work out the things and differences or any goals of trying to put the family back together. It was like, how can we keep the children for a long time? Can we get them to be adopted? They wanted my son to quit his high school where he was, working on becoming a robotic engineer, and they wanted him to go to a public school. They said, "Oh, we would help you there. We put you in a group home and teach you how to do your bank account." And this was later confirmed by me because one of the guest people on the show was a woman who at age 3 was taken from her parents and she handled it in foster care and the Child Protection Society till she was 21. And now at age 30, she had a child, and they're trying to take away her child related to things that happened to her. In her case, her parents were wrongly accused, and they didn't have money, but they took away. And she is so messed up. It really messes up the children, and I hate to say it, my two children that are made it are really messed up too. We are, even though it ended in 2017, it's almost 2024, and here we are 7 years later, and we're still feeling the effects of it. Um, it's uh, uh, it's one of the hardest things to uh, to deal with because it's something you don't understand or anything like that. So uh, this child neglect and child abuse in California is what it sounds like, but they've somehow stretched it, and they say they don't want to take your child away from you, but that is a lie. They try to say your child's unsafe, and you know, and they say they want to keep their children with their family as long as possible in a safe, stable environment. They exposed my children to other children that had all kinds of problems with them, disease and so forth. In fact, there was a bee's nest that almost stung my son to death in the facility. They had him housed in a dormitory style facility next to uh, a, a temporary prison for inmates. And that's not the environment for children. They had no play area. The play area is where all the bees were, and they were kept inside, and they're mixed with other children from other backgrounds, other walks of life. Some of the children had a lot of issues. Some of them were sick, and so our three children were exposed to something they'd never been exposed to. Uh, But all this is based on referrals that people call in and make allegations. And I'm sad to say that people, CPS, has to believe everything is true because there have been documented cases where a child died because the parents were so abusive and they weren't listening to them. But they need to be smart enough to recognize the difference was also there's a game plan. The social worker that worked with us had a very limited background. She was young, single, had no experience with family members or taking care of family members. You can't go to school and learn everything to be a child protection service person. You need experience. You need to develop that. You need stability. She was interested in the bonus they're giving her so she could buy her Gucci purses and stuff. She looked like she was suffering at all. And I had thought for a long time that working in social service and child protection was a good job, but it wasn't a very rich job. It was a job where you make a lot of money and so forth. And when the top dog in CPS, had his Taj Mahal place, you can see where the money goes. And so after the detention series, and when they had the trial, they make a plan. They make a plan of what to do with your children. And the plan is also how the parents are supposed to see their children while they're going through the process. But in our case, my daughter, when she was taken in custody on that day back in 2015, never once saw me. When I had my visitations, I could see my two boys, but I couldn't see my daughter. And again, the allegations were talking about sexual charges. So I have no idea why they were preventing me to see my daughter because she loved me. She was a very precocious child. And so this investigation, was lasting longer than 45 days. They try to do notifications and so forth, but uh, so one thing to keep in mind is I did a mistake allowing them in my home. Remember, CPS cannot enter your home without your permission. Only a court order or warrant or credible information to support the belief the child is in serious immediate danger. Our children were never in serious immediate danger. So they stretched it by getting the police department or the detective part of the police department. Uh, they cannot force you to do a drug test without a court order. Uh, they have to have your consent. And of course, me and my wife, yes, no problem taking drug tests. And of course, we were found negative. And they say that we're allowed to hear the court hearings, but we're out in the hallway. You can't really hear what's going on. When you have all the attorneys in the courtroom, the judge, they're making wheels and deals. The judge goes to golf with the attorneys, the public defender attorneys, the attorneys for child protection services. And so everybody's in cahoots. And so there really is no fairness in the whole system. And, we were never dangerous to our children, but they somehow believe that we were. And why we're dangerous to our children? Because dad didn't have a job and that dad had put his family at risk with the belongings of his parents' things around the home. And granted, it is unsightly to see that, but at the time, I did not realize the effect that would make on them. So uh, it's a horrible thing to go through there because you know I was also going through trying to save my home, and there was a person that wanted to buy our home that was doing intimidation tactics. He broke down our front door, our door lock. I called the police. They said there's nothing to do about it. They put stickers all over my car's windows that are very hard to come off. that said they had legal rights to do this or that, everything. Then one day they decided to cut the electrical box and cut all the wires in the electrical box. Again, the police did nothing. The police allowed it. And I, with my money I put away, it cost me over $2,500 to get the wirings fixed. The door uh, would have to be replaced, and that was more money. And it's just like when the code enforcement was there, they're looking for things. They said, "Well, your garden is too overgrown. You need to cut it back. The fence on the front gate needs to be repaired." They were looking for the fire department was looking for smoke alarms. There were smoke alarms. The house was, 2004. I mean, it was 1998 was built. We bought it in 2004, and it had all the state of the art. It had internal vacuum where you just plug it in the wall. It had air conditioning and heating. It was a very beautiful home. It really was a beautiful home, and they destroyed that. I lost my home because of child protection services, and that was a hard thing to lose a home that you worked up all your life and so forth. What little money I got from the sale of my home went to pay off my mortgage, my first and second. So I broke away even, meaning that I didn't owe any money. But the money, since we had a big debt, and again, that was a predatory loan. It was like somehow I was misled by a lot of people, and then there are people that I really know that are evil, that are determined to destroy other people, and uh, so we at first had a court-appointed counsel. That means a lawyer, but they usually handle 20 cases. They have problems themselves. They really are not going to give attention to your case. They try to make it simple on them. How can we do this case and get it through there? So our two attorneys were worthless. They were worthless. And finally, I met a great attorney. Uh, his name is Vincent W. Davis. He's a family law attorney with family law experiences. He's a trial attorney, meaning that he's done trials. So he has that experience. He's very knowledgeable, very patient, and he'll give your shirt off his back. He really cares about his clients. And it's hard because he has to determine who he can help with. He tries to do pro bono cases. With me, it wasn't pro bono. Uh, I had to give him a retainer, and that took up all my parents' inheritance and so forth. And so uh, in April of 2017, on April 4th, I moved out. And at first, I had no place to live. My wife uh, moved into an apartment, but because there was a court order that said I had to stay away from uh, my children 100 yards, I could live in an apartment even though I was paid for it. We paid for the apartment, by the way, 6 months without even living there because we made hopes of convincing the court to return our daughter so she could bond with her two brothers and her mother. That never materialized. She was so well convinced. And then we had a battle where my wife's sister was trying to take our daughter away, and she lied so much in court. And they had domestic violence with her and her husband. And the social worker lied. And that was the sad part. When the social worker on the stand lies, uh, we have a really great lawsuit. But it takes money to sue somebody. So the lawsuit against the social worker, uh, unless you have money to go after him, you don't. So she got away with murder. She got away, and she's, uh, has to live with herself, I guess, or something like that. So anyway, getting an attorney did help, but the case was dragged out long and long. It was 3 years, and they were in foster care. And at first, it was a group home that was run by Boys Town, USA. And Boys Town decided to come out to California and offer their services, their talents. But what people fail to realize is when they're bidding for the group home against another agency, that they left out a lot of things. They were cheap, and so they gave it to Boys Town. But Boys Town is for children that have no parents. See, they don't realize it, so they try to stereotypically sound like we didn't, that our children didn't have parents. We had parents that cared. We'd show up to the visits. We'd show up to any kind of outing. I had monitors because my children were still trying to do Boy Scouts, and they would cumbersome follow uh, my sons and me in the Boy Scouts, and that was a hard thing to do, to follow them and intimidate them, and then their embarrassment and so forth. But they were told not to put their arms around parents, stand with their hands to the side. We couldn't get too close to them. It's like we had a disease or something. It was so sad. And the caretakers, the boys' home, I hate to say it, not well educated. They came from a rural area in the Midwest, and they had bad habits themselves. They liked to eat a lot, so they gained a lot of weight. They prepared starchy food for our kids. Our kids were gaining weight. And because my son wanted a second glass of orange juice, they would punish him. I cannot believe the punishment. They had merit systems where they would take away points, take away privileges. There's so much cruelty that I observed in the foster care. And Boys Town no longer runs the group home. They eventually weren't able to continue on because this time when they bid, they put more money in there. They realized, but it was sad. It was so sad. I remember us trying to do things, trying to do activity, and if the monitor wasn't watching you, they had to be careful to see at all times. You had no private time with your children. You had no chance. And the children heard a different story. They were brainwashed into thinking that their parents did something awful. And yes, mother and dad did argue. Yes, that's domestic violence. And yes, we learned that you don't argue. But that's not enough to put them through what they had to do or say. Um, our children are loving caring at the time when they're brought in, but after that, they've changed to something completely different. They're withdrawn. They're not loving or caring. Uh, it's really, 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 really sad. So, uh, the foster care later on, they try to break up the family. They put my uh, daughter with one foster care family and my other younger boy with another foster care family. It was so bad that we go to church, and so we want to continue going to church with our children. But when our child had time to go with the other children, the young children, to go behind the altar and talk about things that children understand, the monitor was so angry because she said that our son was not visible for her to see, and she scolded him. She scolded him so bad. And the foster care people that my young son said used to hit him on the back of the head or lock him up in his room. And all this was ignored. And it was really, 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 really sad. Uh, the, uh, the, the, the sad thing it uh, was that because my son would take communion by by the mouth, not by his hands or not by a lay person, he was punished. He was prosecuted. I could not believe that because religion is a personal matter, and they really destroyed his feelings about church and about how things are and things. So uh, that was hard to swallow. And then the Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts, we go to campouts. Uh, my son had to stop. He was on his way to be an Eagle. My young son wanted to be an Eagle. They knew that their dad had almost made an Eagle and became a Life Scout, and their grandfather had become uh, a first class scout. And so they wanted to do better. But scouting was destroyed. AYSO soccer was destroyed. They no longer had a physical sport. And uh, my son did end up playing varsity golf. Uh, of course, my young son played varsity football. And our daughter, she was, 2017, she divorced her parents. We don't know what she was doing. We had heard that somehow she played volleyball, but she's been in and out of college. Uh, my son is so hurt by demons from Child Protective Services that he quit his senior year of college. He was getting all A's. And during the COVID, it really hit him hard. And he was alone. He had his apartment while he was going to college, and he quit his senior year. Will he go back? We don't know. He's come home to live with us, and he's going through a lot of demons. And again, this has all resulted from Child Protection Services, supposed to be the government agency to protect your child from danger and abuse. And here they are. They do the danger and abuse um, to our uh, uh, to our children. And my wife and I are trying to make things ends meet. We've been together for 30 years, my wife and I, and this is a low point for her. Her dad recently died. My mom and dad have died. Um, and the sad part, she's estranged from all her family members of what they did. She has three sisters and a brother, and she has no relationship with them. And then our oldest daughter uh, has a family of her own and has grandchildren that my wife and I have not met. She didn't have me walk her down the aisle when she got married. She's been completely, when this all was taking place, and she was 26 at the time, completely abandoned us. And uh, it was really hard. There's an older boy that my wife, unfortunately, was raped at 15. And instead of giving the child to terminate the child, she gave up for adoption. He later came back in his life. He's 42 now, and he's in the United States Air Force. And he's a JAG. He's a works in the lawyer program of that. But he has grandchildren that my wife had not seen, and he has grown. It seems like all the family members have gone separately from us. So we're very alone in this battle, except for Vincent W. Davis. And he's an attorney that does work, that will make your life turn around, that has good strategies. You can call 888 uh, 888 And it's very important you can be our guest. And you can also uh, email Grace at vincentwdavis.com. She's the producer of this show. I'm just the host, and all I'm doing is making sure that people talk to the show, tell their stories, no matter what their background is. There's some really lost souls that sometimes talking about it helps them. I've tried to talk to you almost this past hour. I only have about a minute or two left. And uh, I really would love to help you with how to fight CPS. And again, my name is Bob Pace. And please call in at 888 Don't give up. What the thing is, never give up. There are people all around the country that are experiencing what you're experiencing. And family is really important. And what's more better than having your children with your mother and father? We all have hiccups. They can be corrected. You can take additional classes. You can all think there. But the big idea behind a family is they stay together as a family and they work a solution together as a family. Weekly meetings would be excellent for the parent stuff. They don't do that. I advocate that they have a mandatory weekly meeting and so forth. Well, we're going to have a next show coming up tomorrow, and I would like to uh, encourage you all to call in and be on the show. Thank you very much. Again, my name is Bob Pace, and I'm here to talk about fighting CPS and win. And I'd love to hear from you. Have a great day and a Happy New Year.